On this episode of Locked On Angels, there's a lot of talk that the White Sox might be looking to move Garrett Crochet this offseason, and Robert Murray of FanSide had suggested that the Angels could be interesting partners. So, let's make the case for Crochet, talk about the pros and cons, and then decide, should the Halos make this move? It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you want to help out the show and do something a little special for us, you can leave a rate and review on Apple Podcasts. Really helps out the show. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button and make sure you subscribe and become an everydayer with us. Get into the conversation by getting into the comments of today's show on YouTube. You can do that whether you're watching or listening. Come on over, get in the comment section. It's the best way to be part of the conversation with us. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. My name is John, and my brother Mike and I make up the Super Halo Bros. Mike is having a Disney day, so it's just me today. He's with the fam at Disneyland. Lucky Mike. I haven't been to Disneyland in years. What's wrong with me? Anyway, it's probably too expensive. That's the problem. That's really what the issue is. We've been fans of the Angels for years. It's our third offseason here at Locked On Angels. We're here 5 days a week talking Angels baseball, Monday through Friday, every single weekday until about mid-December. Then we'll drop down to 3 episodes a week, have a little bit of short form content here and there, but it gives us a little bit of a break before we ramp back up right before spring training back to 5 days a week. On today's show, we're making the case to make a trade for Garrett Crochet, the White Sox starting pitcher who moved out of the bullpen and became a starter in 2024. A lot of talk about him getting moved this offseason, and we've had a lot of questions here on the show in terms of, should the Angels make a play for Garrett Crochet? Hey, that rhymed. Lay by the bay, I just may, come what may, right? Happy Gilmore? No. Yeah, Happy Gilmore. That was Happy Gilmore. Anyway, enough of the bad jokes. It's hard to have good jokes when Mike's not here to bounce them off of. So anyways, let's get into the pros for Garrett Crochet. Robert Murray did hint that if the Angels decided to go after him, they might make for interesting trade partners for the White Sox. Now, there are a number of potential suitors out there who would love to trade for Garrett Crochet, but Robert Murray did say that the Angels are in a better place in terms of trade capital that they've collected in the minor leagues over the last few years, to where they could actually make it happen. And I do believe they could make it happen. Now, whether they should or not is something that we'll discuss toward the end of today's show. But as far as the pros and cons, let's begin with the pros and what Garrett Crochet can bring to the table for the Halos in 2025. Let me first give you the numbers here. He is, first, a left-handed pitcher who went 6-12 in 2024 for the White Sox. He had a 3.58 ERA across 32 starts and 146 innings pitched. He had a 209 strikeouts this year, a 1.068 whip, that's walks and hits per innings pitched, a 4.7 Fangraphs WAR, and a 115 ERA plus, meaning that he was 15% better than the league average pitcher. Ignore that 6-12 record. Obviously, he was playing for the White Sox after all. Worst season in baseball history, franchise history. The Angels had their worst season in franchise history, but at least it's not the worst in MLB history, because that would be a brutal badge to wear, especially given the way things went down for the Halos this year. 146 innings was the most he's thrown in the majors in a season, but he did have an innings limit, which we will get to later on. Fun fact, I picked up Garrett Crochet in fantasy this year, and I totally had him while he was on that hot streak he was on. And right before he started getting put on an innings limit, I was able to trade him. The unfortunate part is that I traded for Luis Rengifo, who got hurt immediately after that. So I guess it was a fair trade because Crochet stopped throwing and Luis Rengifo stopped playing. So I guess that's what I get for trying to, be crafty in my trades in fantasy. 35.1% strikeout rate and a 5.6% walk rate. His four-seam fastball sits about 97 miles per hour. He's got a cutter that's between 91 and 92. He does throw a sweeper. He does throw a changeup at 91, which plays well off of the high-velocity fastball. And then he also throws a sinking fastball at 98 miles per hour. Obviously, his biggest weapon is the four-seam fastball. It had a 15 run value according to StatCast. Essentially, that is defined as like the run impact of an event based on the runners on base, outs, the balls, and the strike count. So his four-seam fastball was his go-to pitch during run-scoring opportunities for the other team, and he was able to shut down those run-scoring opportunities to the tune of about 15 runs in that regard for the fastball. Now, Crochet, I'm going to put this on the screen for you if you're watching on YouTube, but if you're on the audio side, I'll go slow. You love to see his Baseball Savant page. It's fantastic. Obviously, all the red is something you love to see. It lights up like a Christmas tree. Just a reminder here that, yes, this is all well and good, but let's get down into the nitty-gritty. First of all, his expected ERA sits at 2.85. Remember, it was 3.58 across the 140 innings or so that he threw this year, but it was 2.85, which sits in the 91st percentile of all starters in Major League Baseball. Basically, really, really good. And just a reminder that expected ERA is not necessarily a predictive stat, meaning, oh, this guy is going to pitch to a 2.5 ERA. What it actually is a translation of, stay with me now, xWOBA, okay? Weighted on base average. So let me explain that to you. The expected WOBA is the amount of contact, such as strikeouts, walks, hit by pitch, and then the quality of that contact. So that's exit velocity and launch angle. So essentially, the amount of contact and the quality of that contact should yield a lower ERA than what Garrett Crochet got this season, which again was 3.58, should be around 2.85 based on the physical attributes and results of his pitches, the way they were hit, things like that. He is a top guy in swing and miss, chase rate, and strikeout rates. He's in the 87th percentile with his 5.5 walk rate. That's fantastic. He's got a decent ground ball percentage too at 45.1%. And the Angels could provide him with a strong infield defense behind him. Now, the barrel rate and the hard hit percentage are not so great. 9.2% barrel rate, 38.8% hard hit rate. But that is by virtue of being a hard thrower, right? The harder that fastball comes in, the more strong the hit is going to be for the hitter at the plate. So, having said that, let's talk about Garrett Crochet's contract. He's got 2 more years of arbitration left. He's estimated to make $2.9 million this year, according to Spot Track. He would be a free agent after 2026, so he would be here for 25 and 26. And speaking of which, he will be 25 years old to start this next season, and then those 2 years that he's under contract would cover him until he turns 27. Before this year's trade deadline, however, there was a lot of talk about Garrett Crochet getting traded for obvious reasons, but it was reported that Crochet had the desire to receive an extension once he was traded to another team. That was a huge part of any trade talks that involved him. Obviously, the White Sox opted to keep him, and hang on to this offseason to see what kind of deal they could get right now. For reference, Tyler Glasnow got traded from the Rays to the Dodgers last year. Then he immediately got the 5-year, $136.5 million extension. That came out to about $27.3 million a year. So regarding this as a pro in the pro category, I would say that it's nice to know that Crochet would want to be with his next team for the long term. That could also be a con, and we'll get to that, and I'll explain what I mean later. But in that regard, Glasnow was 30 years old when he got that 5-year extension. So perhaps Crochet could be a more long-term solution in the rotation. So whether you think the Angels can be competitive in 2025 or they can't, you still have someone beyond next year that you can really rely on and build around. So let me summarize the pros here. You get a dominant left-handed pitcher with ace potential who's just hitting his stride. He's 25 years old. He wants a contract extension with the team he gets traded to, which would mean he would be part of the Angels in 2025. And then Mike and I have spent a lot of time talking about this, that the Angels' competitive window really starts to open up in 2026. So that means you're going to have Garrett Crochet in that window and beyond if you make this trade. You're also getting the best pitchers or the best years of a pitcher from Garrett Crochet. Again, 25 years old onward, he's going to be really good in the years to come. You add a strikeout pitcher with a 35.1% K rate to a starting rotation in the Angels that ranked 27th in MLB last year. Their strikeout rate collectively was 19.4%. So you immediately add some strikeouts to your rotation with Garrett Crochet. If you mix that in with Kohanowitz, who gets a ton of ground balls, Jose Soriano, who can strike out guys, but also get ground outs, you mix that with soft tossing pitchers like Tyler Anderson and Kyle Hendricks next year, it really gives the Angels a lot of different looks out of the starting rotation when you have the velo that Garrett Crochet offers. He's got a minuscule walk percentage, 5.6. And the Angels, their starting rotation last year, surprise, surprise, ranked dead last with 9.1% in terms of walk rate. So let's face it, Garrett Crochet is a legitimate ace. I know the Angels have a lot of pitchers that they're excited about, but adding Crochet for 2025 and beyond would be an immediate boost to the rotation. It gives time for the guys that they're excited about, that we're excited about, the arms and the starting pitchers behind this rotation. It gives them time to develop more because Garrett Crochet takes up that, honestly, number one spot in the rotation. Think about it this way. You have Crochet, Anderson, Soriano, Kohanowitz, and Kyle Hendricks as your starting 5 in 2025, while you have the options of Reed Detmers, Chase Silseth, Sam Aldegheri, George Clausen, Caden Dana. That is, if some of those guys are still around, and that's what we're going to get to in our next segment. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And coming up on Locked On Angels, what are the cons of trading for Garrett Crochet? Well, it's going to involve some difficult goodbyes, and we're going to get into that coming right up. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, if you haven't tried FanDuel yet, now is your chance. You don't want to pass this up. You can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need all in one place to place live bets on the NFL. If you get a hunch in the middle of the game and you're thinking, I got a good feeling about this, follow that good feeling and place a $5 bet. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and every dayers, we're making the case. I love this series. It's so much fun. We're making the case to trade for Garrett Crochet. Would the Halos actually go through with this? As we make the case for Garrett Crochet, we talked about the pros of the Angels trading for him, but now it's time to talk about the cons. I think the most obvious con in terms of trading for Garrett Crochet has to be the injury history. Crochet had Tommy John surgery in April of 2022. That kept him out until May of 2023. He did return, but then he had shoulder issues that caused him to miss June through September of 2023. Previously, in 2021, he had some back strain that put him on the IL. He also had some forearm and elbow concerns back in 2020 during the wild card series. He threw 9 pitches and then got removed from the game. Definitely, that was the indication that he was going to need Tommy John down the line. And sure enough, he got that in 2022. It does make you think. We talked about Glasnow in the last segment. It does make you think about somebody like Glasnow, who's also a hard thrower, who didn't have any elbow issues in his first year back, coming back from Tommy John. But it is what ultimately shut him down in 2024, and the Dodgers were not able to use him in the postseason. On the other hand, you have Shohei Ohtani, who pitched essentially 3 straight years after his Tommy John. And then at the end of 2023, he had the elbow issue and the surgery that kept him off the mound in 2024. So the question here is Crochet a ticking time bomb? And is that worth the trade? I think you have to consider the injury history when you consider possible cons against trading for Garrett Crochet, which leads to the next con, the innings limit. Granted, the White Sox, they were trying to mitigate any injuries to Crochet this season. They put him on an innings limit. They tried to keep him around 65 pitches at the second half of the season and not more than that. Look, they were a team going nowhere. I think it was wise for them to put Crochet on an innings limit. However, I looked at the numbers, and here's what I found. Across his first 18 starts in 2024, Crochet threw 101 innings from March to the end of June. He did pitch through the 7th inning on 3 occasions, and in 8 starts pitched through the 6th. So he was going deep into games through those first 18 starts, but it was July that the Sox put him on an innings limit. And from July to the end of the season, he had only 44 2/3 innings pitched. So he went from 101 1/3 in the first half and off the innings limit down to just 44 innings. The most innings he was allowed to go was just 4, and again, around 65 pitches was the goal. Sometimes he'd go over that, sometimes he wouldn't. But you could see that it affected his play as well. So I'm going to give you a little before and after if you're watching on the video side, and I'll explain it for you on the audio side. So before the innings limit, again, he had 18 starts, 101 innings pitched. His ERA was a 3.02. After the innings limit, he had a 4.84 ERA. Now, I know that's a little bit extrapolated because he had more innings before the limit, and so the ERA gets a little bit inflated. So I broke it down this way. Basically, he gave up 34 runs across 101 innings pitched, and he gave up 24 runs across 44 innings pitched. So 34 across 101, 24 across 44 innings pitched. The batting average against before the innings limit was 198. After the innings limit, 269. The OPS that he gave up to opposing hitters before the innings limit, 570, and the OPS after the innings limit, 788. So 218 points higher, actually. The fielding, independent pitching, basically everything that the pitcher can control himself, as if, there was no defense behind him, or at least a competent defense who should make all the plays. This is everything he can control himself in terms of hits, walks, home runs, hit by pitch. He had a 2.38 FIP, and after the innings limit, a 3.39 FIP. So it makes you wonder if the innings limit affected him, or was it a matter of running out of steam toward the end of the season? I think that's something you seriously have to consider when you think about Garrett Crochet and whether or not you want to trade for him. Finally, here's the last con I have for you. Who are the Angels willing to give up? So I found this great MLB.com article that had 8 potential landing spots for Garrett Crochet. The Angels were not on there. Obviously, they never get talked about. That's why you come to Locked On Angels, so we can talk Angels baseball. But here's the thing. This is who they would essentially have to compete with if they wanted to land a deal that brought Garrett Crochet to the Angels. The Phillies, the Padres, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Orioles, the Red Sox, and the Mets. So 8 different teams. And that's, they stopped there. There's probably way more teams they would have to compete with. And here's what the MLB article had to say. Again, this goes back to who are the Angels willing to give up? Well, if these other teams want to make this deal, here's who they might have to give up. They suggested that the Phillies have 4 top 100 prospects, and any trade might involve probably 2 of them, which is crazy to think about. They also said that the Yankees would have to begin a deal involving 1 or both of their top 2 prospects, Jason Dominguez and Spencer Jones, and they would even have to add to that. The Yankees did inquire about Crochet during the trade deadline, and the White Sox were not interested in what they had to offer. It could take the Orioles, their 1 or 2 top prospects in their system, and this article even suggested pairing them with a 3 and or a 4. So it's clear that a trade for Garrett Crochet would require some of the Angels' top prospects. You're not going to get them for Jose Suarez, right? You're not going to get them for the guys that you want to see off this team. It's just not going to happen. So I think that the Angels, considering what this article had to say and what these other teams with a whole plethora of great minor leaguers would have to give up, it's probably going to be the only 2 top 100 prospects the Angels have, and that's Caden Dana and Christian Moore. And it might be some combination of Dana and or Christian Moore with another combination of George Clausen, Josue Lugo, Denzer Guzman, Sam Aldeguerri, Chris Cortez, Barrett Kent, Trey Gregory Alford, you name it, right? If you're willing to part with Dana, Moore, and Clausen, and probably 1 more, I think that's where this trade starts. I think that's where the package starts. And with, a 4th of any of those names I mentioned, again, Lugo, Guzman, Cortez, Barrett Kent, Trey Gregory Alford, I think you're going to have to start with Caden Dana and Christian Moore and probably George Clausen to even come close to offering something comparable that the Phillies could give, the Braves could give, the Orioles could give, right? So who are you willing to part with? And having said that, you got to think about the extension. Garrett Crochet wants an extension from the team he gets traded to, but would he take one with the Angels? Do you risk whether or not he would take one after you've given up so much trade capital and prospects in the first place? That's a pretty big risk. and I'm not sure it's one I'd be willing to take. So in terms of cons, I think that's one you really have to consider when it comes to trading for Garrett Crochet. Okay, we have run through the pros and the cons of trading for Garrett Crochet, and we're going to decide, should the Halos do it? Would you do this? I would love to hear from you in the comments section on YouTube, or maybe you hit us up on Twitter and tag us and say, hey, listen to the show. Here's what I think. We'd love to hear that. So let me run through again what some pros are for Garrett Crochet. He's an immediate ace to this rotation in the here and now and for the years to come. He's looking for an extension from the team that he goes to in a trade. And he would be here for the competitive window that the Angels have in front of them. Again, Mike and I talk about it all the time, probably 2026. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 25, but I think you have to consider 26 and beyond to truly be a competitive window. And Crochet would be here for that, right? At least through 2026. And you would hope that he would sign the extension that he wants. However, you have to consider the cons as well. The injury history is concerning. The way his season ended was a bit sketchy in 2024. Again, I think you can attribute his struggles to being on that innings limit. He was a bullpen guy, becoming a starter in 2024, and then they had to cut his innings down. And I think that honestly affects a gamer like Garrett Crochet when he can't go out there and do everything that he wants to do. So take that into consideration, the way his season ended. I think it has a lot to do with the innings limit. But again, it was not as good as the first half, so you kind of wonder if he ran out of some steam there. He's going to cost a lot. He's going to cost a lot of prospects that I'm excited about, that Mike's excited about, that you, our everydayers, are excited about. He is going to cost a lot of prospect capital in order to, one, even make this trade, and two, compete with the other teams that want Garrett Crochet on their team as well. And on that note of costing a lot, would he even want to stay here? Would he even want to sign an extension after being traded? That is to say, would he take the extension if it was offered to him? It's not a guarantee. Now, I know immediately Glasnow signed his with the Dodgers because obviously they're in a winning, they're in their winning ways, and they won the World Series, and Glasnow knew they were close when he signed the extension, so why not secure that? The Angels, however, are not in that window. They are working towards something that, makes them competitive over the next 5 years or so, but it's too big of an if to me if Garrett Crochet would sign an extension. So let's answer the question. Should the Angels go for it? Should the Angels make this trade? Again, I want to hear from you. So jump down into the comments section on YouTube or tag us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. Personally, I'll give you my opinion. I would be really torn. Yes, you'd get a proven arm, an immediate ace, and someone who could be here for the long haul. And unfortunately for me, it's that could that really makes all of this go up in smoke. As for being an ace, I believe Crochet is an ace, and he will be an ace to whatever team he goes to. He's somebody that I would really want on this team. But here's how I feel. The potential for someone like Caden Dana or George Clausen to become an ace is as great as the potential for Garrett Crochet to get hurt again. Does that make sense? Here's what I mean to say. The risk to see if those guys pan out and have what it takes to be an ace, that risk feels equal to the risk you'd be taking on long-term health from Garrett Crochet. So again, I would rather roll the dice and see if Dana or Clausen can be an ace versus roll the dice on Crochet being healthy. I know Mike and I have said many times that we feel like the Angels can be competitive in 2026. Crochet would certainly shore that up if he chose to stay with an extension, but it feels like they're finally turning the corner and having good prospects in the minor leagues. And it would be a shame to give away up to 4 of them, if not more. It almost makes more sense to me, guys, to go the free agent route with starting pitching. That way you can shore up your rotation for multiple years. You have a guarantee with somebody under contract who's willing to come to Anaheim. So for me, I think I'm going to have to pass on this move. As much as I like Garrett Crochet and what he would do to this team, I feel like there are other routes to go here. And if they make this move to add Crochet, are they back where they started? They have one really great pitcher and a bad rotation like they did with Shohei Ohtani. I would rather keep Dana, Clausen, Aldegari, all those guys, and have them grow into something special. And even if they're not something special, they're still 2s, they're still 3s, they're still 4s, and you need guys in your rotation. And I would love to see some young arms step up to the task and try to become an ace. Maybe they don't hit it, but it's better than not having any prospects at all. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head on over to Locked On MLB with our baseball buddy Sully. He's bringing you some humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. You can find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. We invite you to tag us there, be in the conversation here on YouTube as well. And on tomorrow's show on Locked On Angels, Mike will be back with us. The Angels made some 40-man roster moves on Tuesday. We're going to discuss them and how it impacts 2025, why they did it. They also potentially said goodbye to yet another first-round pick, and we'll talk about that as well. Until then, my name is John. My brother Mike will be back with us tomorrow. Thank you for being here today. Get in the conversation, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, and we will see you right back here on Thursday.